that. Alright, I'm Scott with Scytale, and I'm going to talk about authenticating the Vault with SPIFFE and OIDC Federation. So basically, I'm going to give a very brief presentation on using SPIFFE as a bootstrap identity provider. Way to look at this is identity-based authorization, so you don't need to have any passwords or anything anywhere. It's simply the workload's own identity and that will establish the credentials that are needed. So we can imagine we have a situation where we have a workload that needs some sort of credentials from Vault. We don't really care what it needs to talk to for our purposes. We have the SPIFFE OIDC provider, and then as well as the SPIFFE agent and SPIFFE server. So the OIDC provider and the SPIFFE server and SPIFFE agent have kind of a trust relationship. It has an identity. The workload that we need to get credentials from Vault as well attests to the SPIFFE agent, and it has an identity of the SPIFFE ID, SPIFFE example org workload. We have configured Vault to use the SPIFFE OIDC provider, and from there we'll basically authenticate a jot. And finally, we have this workload that needs to get some sort of login authentication from Vault, right? So the first thing that happens is this workload asks the SPIFFE agent for a jot with an issuer, a subject, and some set of claims that we'll see later. The workload then presents that to Vault, again with the issuer, the subject, and some claims that we'll see. Vault communicates with the SPIFFE OIDC provider, and this actually caches the JOCs, so although I show it here as a round trip, it doesn't actually do that. Then Vault returns credentials for Vault, which is basically a client token, an accessor, and whatever is needed to communicate with Vault. And the workload can now communicate with Vault for whatever credentials it needs to get from Vault. So let's take a look at what the JOT, the discovery document, and the JOCs looks like. So the JOT header isn't really too interesting. There's a key ID that is used to basically look up the provider, the discovery document, and the JOCs. The JOT payload itself that we get from SPIFFE has an audience, which in this case is just a Vault role of dev, and it's kind of an arbitrary name that just has to match so that we know what to look for. So the issuer, and then the subject, which is the SPIFFE ID of the workload that we saw earlier. It's kind of hard to see this, but this is the OIDC discovery document that is served by the SPIFFE OIDC provider. There's not too much interesting here, a little bit of cryptography stuff, as well as the location of the actual JOCs. The JOCs itself has the key ID we saw earlier, and then a bunch of cryptographic material that's used to verify and validate the JOT. All right, so there's some one-time configuration we have to do with Vault so that it knows about the OIDC provider. There's two ways we can do this. We can do this either through the discovery document or directly to the JOCs. Next, we need to bind the workload, the claims for that workload to a Vault role. So here we create a Vault role called dev. We give it a very short TTL so that those credentials are not useful for very long. We have a bound audience that comes from the same, it's the same audience that we saw in the JOT, and then a subject, which again is the SPIFFE ID, the identifier for that workload. And then finally, we need to use a JOT to obtain a Vault login auth. And this is the only thing that we need to do kind of over and over once we have things configured. I'm showing this from the command line. Of course, a normal application would use the workload API, but if we do it from the command line, we can kind of test this all out and see that it works without writing any code. So first, from SPIFFE agent, we're going to ask for a JOT with the audience of Vault dev. We've already set up all of our attestation policies and other policies, but we'll notice that what we get back is a JOT without providing anything about our own identity, because SPIFFE already knows that. It already knows that we're example.org workload. And then we simply give it the claim that'll be used within the JOT to know which token to get. Next, we create a Vault payload. We put the JOT in there, the role that we want, and then again, doing this from the command line, it's simple curl. And what we get back is a Vault client token and accessor, which can now be used to communicate with Vault to get whatever credentials. So what just happened? We obtained a Vault login token, we had no stored credentials for Vault anywhere at all. Putting usernames, passwords, credentials in your software, stop doing that, right? We used only our own workload identity, which is established by Spire, and then a target audience, right, which is a set of claims in the JOT. And that login token was very short-lived, so if someone was to steal that, it's not useful for very long. That's it. Here's where you can learn more about SPIFFE and Spire.